I'm delighted to be joined by former Peterborough United midfielder Steven Thomson. Steven, first and foremost, keeping well in these weird times we live in?
Yeah, it's good. Just way work. I mean, obviously now since I've retired, I'm a financial advisor, and a lot of my time's face to face with clients. So it's a bit strange doing. I mean, I'm using these video calls every day with clients and things like that. So that is strange, and especially homeschooling two young kids as well.
I think that's when you speak to former players, that's the one thing they say straight away is like homeschooling. It's a nightmare because obviously as a footballer, you're very much like any other job. You're very rarely in the house during the day.
Yeah, very rarely. I mean, even more so now. I mean, I was around lots when my kids were young because obviously, it's like footballers, they only work half days, don't they? And then in the real world, I work up in London, so if I'm in the office, don't get back to 8 o'clock at night, things like that. But having them around, I do work from home some days, but having them around every day and all the noise and all that, that's why I've got the earphones in, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to hear you. But yeah, no, it's strange times, but I mean, we've just got to do what we've got to do, kind of move forward and try and get out of it.
Exactly. I mean, I wanted to talk to you about your time at Peterborough because, I mean, we'll get on to why I particularly remember you more than anybody else during that period of time. But when you first joined, you came from Crystal Palace. Can you remember how that move came about and what was said to sort of tempt you?
Yeah, what happened was I'd been at Palace since 1994 and went through youth reserves and then into the first team. I made my debut at 19 at Palace, and then I was there until I was 25. And it got to kind of a point where I had been there for quite a long time. Palace did offer me a new contract, which was about February time, and then I got injured, but I rejected it. And then I just thought I need a new, fresh challenge. And in hindsight, I probably should have stayed because I think they got promoted to the Premier League next season. And that off the back of that last season, I think I played about 35, 38 games. And Hibs came in for me in the summer. And so I'd gone up there. My wife had left her job. I'd sold my house in London. And the day before I was due to fly, I was meant to fly up on the Sunday, and then on the Saturday, I got a call from the chairman and manager saying that they didn't have the funds to sign me. So then by this point, we were kind of halfway into kind of pre-season. So then I was starting to panic because I hadn't pursued anything else because I thought it was all going to go through. So I went down to Bournemouth, had a couple of days training there. They offered me something. And then at that point, I kind of thought, well, Bournemouth, they had just been promoted from League Two. So then I thought, well, I don't know if I want to go way down to Bournemouth and stuff like that. So I was just keeping my options open. But then the time was kind of getting on. And then just to keep myself fit, I played a couple of games for Leyton Orient. And at the time, one of the games was against Peterborough. Mm-hmm. I've just played a bounce game, behind closed doors game. And then Baz came up to me after the game, and he thought I'd signed for Leyton Orient. And I said no. And he said, "Oh, do you want to come and sign for us?" And then obviously at the time I'd played with Leon and Saji Burton. They were both in my youth team at Palace, and we came through Palace all together. So then they said, "No, come and play." So then that was it. I just went and thought, right, well, I may as well go and do it. I had to sign for someone because I think the season had already started one game. Mm-hmm. And I thought, right, I need to just sign somewhere and just get in and just get playing again because it'd gone on too long in there.
It's funny because when you speak to players and you ask them the question, what was negotiation like with Barry? It doesn't matter whether he's director of football or manager. They always say the same thing. He offered me very little. I said no. He came back. I said no again. And then suddenly they're in a Peterborough shirt. I guess in your job now, looking back, I'd imagine you probably thought, well, I could probably get another 20, 30 quid here.
Yeah, well, when I was at the time, I think Baz played on the fact that he knew I wanted to get back in playing, and the season had started and things like that. So he did offer me very, very low money, and I mean I got offered quite good money at Bournemouth, but something about it I didn't feel right, and then I just took Baz up on his offer, and he says if you come in, he said budgets, because it was just after all the ITV digital stuff, wasn't it? Around about 2003, was that round about?
Yeah.
Because I know clubs were kind of, skint at that point as well. So I just thought, right, I'll go and play and then see what happens from there. And within about 3 months, I think I'd signed a new contract, to get me up to kind of in par with the other boys that were playing.
You mentioned Sadji Burton and Leon McKenzie, who, I mean, Sadji played a lot of games. Obviously, Leon McKenzie was someone who just started as a loan player and then became a permanent player. Did that help because you obviously knew them? Because, as you say, you were sort of thrown in a little bit at the deep end in terms of when you eventually got the deal done. So I suppose it was nice to have people in the dressing room you knew.
Yeah, it's always nice to have players that you kind of know. But I mean, at the time, I mean, I moved down to London when I was 16 and things like that. So I wasn't fazed by walking into a changing room with guys I didn't know. But I mean, at the time, it was always good, because you could ask them and say, "Oh, what does he, what does he do? Where does he like the ball?" You could ask them, personally on the phone, maybe before a game. But I think when I signed, I think I got thrown straight in against Tranmere away. Up there, so it was like, right, and I didn't even know these guys, but obviously it was good to have Leon and Sadji playing.
Leon, particularly as a midfield sort of striker relationship, someone who wanted to pass forward like you did, you need someone to make the runs, and I guess things can happen on a training ground, but ultimately it's about matches and how you get sort of relationships going like that.
Yeah, I mean, Leon was always good because I had a good relationship with Liam, because obviously we came through the youth team together, we played lots of reserve teams, and then we played in the first team at Palace together. So I knew exactly what he wanted, where he wanted it, and things like that. So that was kind of quite easy. And obviously I was gutted when he left, but it was good for him. But gutted for, obviously, Peterborough, because he made a real difference at that level.
What was the dressing room like other than those two players? Because Barry obviously had quite a number of players come through. It's so many new players coming in. If you weren't performing, you'd be replaced. Simon Ray said actually that helped him in his career, because he always felt like he was on his toes. He needed to perform. Did it feel a bit weird with so many people coming in all the time?
Yeah, it felt strange. I mean, no disrespect at the time to what it was like and things like that, But I'd gone from kind of Palace, where you weren't allowed on a team coach, you weren't allowed to have anything other than water and maybe a Jaffa cake, to playing at Tranmere away, and then we stopped after the game because we got a draw. And Baz buying everyone kebabs and bottles of Coke and things like that. I just couldn't believe it, And then, and the time as well, it was just a conveyor belt of boys kind of coming in and going, and coaches and things like that. So it was going from one extreme to kind of another. But there was a good group of lads there, a good bunch of lads who wanted to do well, but obviously it just maybe lacked a wee bit of professionalism. But it was a good time.
Obviously, the goal that always sticks in my memory for you, because I had such a good view of it and I knew it was going to go in as soon as you kicked it, was against Swindon. And we've found the goal now, so it did exist. You're telling people it was from the half.
I haven't seen it. I didn't watch it, but you sent it through.
Well, I've watched it back just to make sure that. I mean, I said halfway line. It was in the half. It was in the D. So that technically counts.
Well, we should have just not watched the video, and we could have just said halfway line.
Could have done, but I don't like to lie to the people. But those kind of finishes always intrigues me, because if you say to someone, "I want you to score from the halfway line, regardless of whether there's a goalie there," there's a lot of pressure on doing it. But instinctively, I guess you just go with the flow, don't you? And you think there's an opportunity here. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, my recollection was, I didn't start that game. I was on the bench that game, and I think Curtis came off injured, Curtis Woodhouse. And Baz kind of went on, and we played really well that day. And and Swindon were quite high up in the league. But I just remember, I think it might have been Clarkey or something went to close down the goalie. I can't remember who it was.
Definitely someone went. Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
And the goalkeeper kind of miskicked it, and I knew he was off his box, and it just sat nicely for me, and then I just hit it, and I just remember it, getting in. It was quite good because my dad was at the game, and that was his first Peterborough game that he'd been to, so it was quite a good day. It's not bad when you score a goal, is it?
Well, exactly. I mean,
regardless if it's halfway line or not. Yeah.
We'll say halfway line, just
we'll just call it halfway line.
The footage is grainy. Let's just accept it as what it is. But I mean, obviously, you weren't necessarily known at Posh as a goal scoring midfielder, someone who's going to break the lines and sort of get 9-10 a season. But was that something that you sort of adapted to a little bit in that league? Because, as you say, when you left Palace after so long, you have to find yourself as a certain player, don't you, in the league, in terms of what you're going to be as a midfielder.
Yeah, I think it was slightly different because, I mean, obviously, maybe dropping down a level, I didn't really pay much attention to that level as such, because you only really kind of, when you were at Palace, the main aim was to get into the Premier League. So you never really kind of looked, below. But I mean, taking a step down, it didn't, it was just a little bit, I would say, less football played, a little bit more back to front and things like that. But overall, I mean, it was you've got to adapt. Like, I mean, obviously as well, because I'm quite small. I mean, 5'7.5", nearly 8. But it's you've got you've got to adapt. Otherwise you'll just get bullied in there. And it was, I mean, we played some good football at the times, but then obviously at times we didn't. We went on a bad run for a while, but overall it was good. I enjoyed it.
I mean, Curtis Woodhouse has obviously gone into boxing and management and all sorts. And
Well,
from,
yeah, everything, yeah.
From that time, that just sums him up, really, doesn't it? In terms of he was a very effervescent character.
Yeah, he was. I mean, Curtis as well. I had come across Curtis a few times playing against him at Sheffield United in Birmingham. So obviously I'd had a few battles with him. So when he came, it was good, and we kind of knew each other from playing against, and he was good to play with. And he really blossomed on the fact that Baz kind of just took the reins off him a wee bit, and let him kind of do what he wanted to do. And he was a really good player for us at that point.
What did you? I mean, obviously, as you said, you'd moved to London as a 16-year-old, so you weren't phased by sort of moving to a different sort of location. Is it really hard as a footballer, particularly when you're making that first move, in terms of setting any kind of roots? Because it always amazes me where players will either rent a house or they'll buy a house or they'll try and do this, that, and the other. Do you have to get that right so quickly? Because it's very hard to judge in football whether you're going to be at a place for 2 years or 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Palace, when I first came down, it was digs and things like that. You stayed in as a young boy, and then I bought my first place at 19, things like that. But as soon as I moved to Peterborough, I rented somewhere like pretty much straight away. But I only rented for a few months and bought a house there. And I always said if I'm going to play for a club, I should buy a house there, because I think that kind of hindered a few of the boys. Because a lot of the boys, there used to be a couple of car schools that came up from London. Like Clarkey and Andre and things like that. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in the area and then just kind of live in the area. And even when I left and went up to Scotland, I bought a house there, things like that, and Brighton and things. I've always bought where I want, because I think that's important to kind of settle down and just be in the area.
Where did you buy in Peterborough? Did you make a good profit or?
Well, I actually only sold it last year. I bought in I was just by the Tesco's, Hampton Hargate.
Yeah.
I think most of the boys were in there, at the time. It was either Hampton Hargate or Hampton Vale. But yeah, I only just sold it just recently.
If we'd have known you had a house there, you could have been accommodating all of our players.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've had people in there renting since I left, so that's why I'd never sold it once they rent. But yeah, no, I always, because we really enjoyed our time in Peterborough. Although we came from London, and it was quite nice having that quieter lifestyle and things like that. We actually had intentions when we left, say like we'll keep that, and it's an opportunity maybe to go back and live there. But obviously things don't always go to plan.
In terms of your departure for Peterborough, I guess when you speak to players about when they leave, most of them will know it's coming. It's a progression, isn't it? If you're not playing or you're out of the side or et cetera, et cetera. How was it for you? Did you kind of know that the next chapter was upon you?
Well, it was a funny one. It was a strange one, because at the time we got relegated that year, and I spent quite a bit of time out the team. Under I can't even remember his name. So once Bobby Gold left, who came in after Bobby Gold? Was it Quinn?
Yeah, it might have been Quinn. Yeah.
Yeah, when he came in, I spent a lot of time out the team, and the results were going really bad. And then Baz asked me to come back and play. So when I was back in playing, Baz was wanting to offer me a new contract, and then I just kind of felt that it wasn't right, because we got relegated, and then the new managers were coming in, and then they were kind of like, they were saying to me, "I'll come back in for pre-season and stuff," and I was like, oh, I'm not going down that route, and I'd already had a few offers anyway, so I was just free to go. I mean, as I say, I was hoping to extend the time there because we quite liked it, but obviously sometimes it's out with your control.
Yeah. In terms of obviously after you finished playing, you've I think you went to the PFA for a little bit, didn't you, before you went into the job? Is that correct?
No.
No, I've given you a job there. I do apologise.
You've given me a job, yeah, I know. No.
What a great job you did as well. But
Yeah.
towards the end of your career, then, did you have a thought process of what you were going to do? Because speaking to other players, that they all say, I was going to do this, that, and the other, but they never actually did it because obviously
Never had.
you
Yeah.
do it as a footballer that it's going to go on forever. You were sort of a little bit breaking the mold in a sense. You were a relatively intelligent footballer, so I'd imagine you started planning for the future quite early.
Yeah, well, my son, when we moved up to Scotland, I went to Falkirk in the Scottish Premier League, and my son was born the following year. So I was 28, and I said to myself, right, well, this isn't going to last forever. I need to start doing something I was going to do. And then I kind of started flirting with the idea when I was at Peterborough, because Clive Platt was kind of thinking about doing it as well, and we kind of started doing it. He stopped doing. He's now a football agent, but he was doing it as well, and we were good mates. So then I just kind of put the things in, and then just started, getting all the qualifications. And then when I retired, I was at St Mirren. I had opportunities to keep playing, but I was 35, and then my son was about to start school, and I thought, right, well, we're going to move to where we're going to live, and then my son can start school, and I was fully qualified, and then I got a job in London. Funny enough, Shane Hugh got me the job.
Wow.
Do you remember Hughie?
I do remember Hughie, yeah.
Yeah, well, what I did was when I retired, I went, I signed part-time for Dover.
Mm-hmm.
And Nicky Forster, who I played with at Brighton, was manager there. And he said, come down at Dover. And then when I was there, Shane was there. And then he said, my company's looking for advisors. Why don't you come for an interview? So I ended up working with Shane for a few years. He's no longer here, but yeah. So yeah, no, I had a plan in place.
Yeah, always remember Shane. It's very much any Aussie, or any fake Aussie as he was a little bit, but any Aussie was always just talking about going home in the summer, getting on the surf. And I was pretty.
Yeah, going doing it. Yeah.
What a life to lead.
Yeah, Shane's a good lad. I mean, I still speak to him like every other week, pretty much, because he's still a financial advisor, but he's set up his own business now.
Yeah, doesn't want to go into business with you, no? Doesn't want to get you as a partner.
Nah, he's too greedy. He wants to keep it all for himself, I think.
Well, I mean, it always amazes me when you go out of a career that you've been in for quite some time, and speaking to Simon Ray about this, is like, the question is, do you miss football? And his answer was, you miss the people, but I don't miss the game. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that, you miss it depends what kind of career you've had as well, but you miss the training ground and the banter and stuff like that, but there's nothing like playing on a Saturday, so you do miss it. I mean, since I stopped playing full time, what's that? It's 7 years ago now, so it's kind of a bit like, you at first you really miss it and you're kind of still set in your ways, and then after a while you don't, you look forward to looking at the scores on a Saturday afternoon now. But with this lockdown, I think I'm missing it more than I had been. But I think that's just because people are posting videos and things like that, and you start looking at it. And so, yeah, no, I do miss it. I must admit, I do really miss it, because from starting at 16, it was 19 years of your life. So it's a long period of time. And then it sure beats sitting in front of a laptop 9 to 5 anyway.
I'm sure you get plenty of rewards in the job that you do now, though, even though it is a little bit different.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, in terms of myself, and that might be where you got the thing about the PFA, is that I've got a business partnership with the Scottish FA. So I deal with the Scottish professional footballers.
That must have been it. That must have been it. That must have been the reason why.
That was it. That's where I think you might have got that from. And also as well, I've got quite a lot of footballers who are clients and things down in England and stuff like that. So I've still got a little bit of, involvement in football, but hopefully helping them that they don't end up bankrupt like too many players have been.
Is that because that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think everyone looks at football at the Premier League, and I mean, just this week, Lee Hendry on Harry's Heroes talking about going bankrupt, and obviously he was at the top of his game and earning a ridiculous amount of money per week. Do you think that there was enough being said about that probably 10, 15 years ago? I think now, as you say, you're working for a company that are potentially helping the footballers of today, but maybe 15 years ago that wasn't the case.
I'm not so much sure about that, because I just think, a lot of players have the mentality that they're going to earn that money for the rest of their life. And it's kind of like, oh, it won't happen to me scenario, which, you know, meeting boys and stuff like that, and you speak to them and they say, nah, the first thing I ask them is what you're going to do when you retire. Not one of them will give you an answer. You know, it's crazy. They just say, oh, I'm not thinking about that yet. So, you know, in terms of back then, the PFA used to be in and trying to help you, but definitely, as you say, there is more awareness around, you know, going back. But whether players are actually listening to it is a different story. And also as well, you know, you've got the top leagues, you know, which boys are rewarded, you know, a lot better than what we were when we played. But still, when you go down to the kind of lower leagues and, you know, like League One and League Two and things like that, boys don't earn as much as what some people think. And also as well, they might not have the money to put plans in place, you know, for them, for themselves, you know. So as the PFA have always been there to help you, but it's just whether you chose to take up the advice.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, there are stories of footballers that have really struggled because of finances, and often when they go out of the game, in terms of the fact that they don't have the funds, or they try and continue to do what they were doing as a footballer lifestyle. What do you
Yeah.
say to people? Is it a case of be sensible?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of when I kind of meet boys and things like that for the kind of first time, and I kind of say to them, you know, it's about putting a plan in place, and that's why I said to you, you know, I always say, you know, ask them what they're going to do after retirement, because I think that's more important, you know, in terms of football, because the career can. It's all right. Everyone thinks, yeah, I'm going to play to 35, 36. But, I mean, you were speaking to Cy Ray earlier, and I think he retired, what, 26, 27. And he probably didn't think that was going to happen. So I think I just say to them as well, you know, you're in a position, you earn good money, but at least put some money away. You know, you've got to get that fine balance between enjoying your life and not wasting your money, and then just try and help them, even if it's just that they've got some sort of nest egg in place. So when they do retire, they can fall back on that until they can get their time to, you know, find out what they're going to do next. Because so many boys finish and they haven't got a penny. And then they end up falling into jobs that they don't want to do, or, you know, they just have to do it because they've got a mortgage and got kids and a wife and things like that.
I suppose
So it is difficult.
I suppose if anything, with this global pandemic that we're currently experiencing, is a lesson to everybody, isn't it? That, you know, you can't assume that everything is going to continue on the same trajectory.
No, I mean, it is as well. I mean, I've got lots of boys, you know, like phoning me and panicking and having to take pay cuts, and some have been furloughed and, you know, things like that, and they're worrying. And I was saying, well, you know, this is what it will be like. You know, when you finish, no one's going to walk up and give you a job, and no one's going to say, oh, here you go, there's 50 or 100 grand a year. It just doesn't happen in the real world, I said. So it's probably giving them a bit of a reality check, which is good.
I think as well, like, I mean, we were having this conversation before. If I happen to be furloughed, do you learn a new skill? Do you learn a new talent, what you can train at home? And I guess that's, you know, it'd be great to have another string to your bow.
Yeah, but I can't imagine many players doing that. Can't imagine it.
I've had a guitar set over there. I've played one month.
Yeah. Nah, I can't imagine many players doing that, to be honest. But yeah, no, I mean, ideally, yeah, that would be great. But I can't imagine. It's too nice out there. They'll be sitting in the back garden chilling.
Yeah. And just finally, how many yards was your goal? 45 or 50 yards, you reckon? 60 yards?
Don't know. I'll let you decide on
Is it
that.
in your own half?
Peterborough's a long pitch.